Hello and welcome to this week's Talking Lower League with Talking Boys. Another day, another week, more football for us to talk about. I feel as if, even though we do this weekly, we've got about 4 games to catch up on, and that's just obviously talking about Clyde as well. I'm thrilled as ever to be joined by the real star, the real MVP of the podcast, the man that makes everything tick along very nicely, Ross Gray, who, if anybody who isn't watching on YouTube, please go over to Talking Lower League on YouTube, subscribe, like the video, and you'll see Ross being, of course, the perfect model for the Talking Lower League jersey. Ross, it's looking very good on you. Is that the first time you've been called a model? I imagine not, or?
I am legally obliged to say no comment.
Okay, fantastic. I'm glad we've cleared that up. And yeah, about time, because we've got loads to get through as ever. I see it every week. We're going to be kicking off chatting about some standout results from the Scottish Cup at the weekend, having a wee quick chat about probably primarily really our comments on the fourth round draw. Let's not get ahead of ourselves with the fifth. And then, of course, another busy midweek. Some ties taking place on the Tuesday night, the Thursday night, and of course looking forward to Saturday as well. So we've got a lot to get through, and we're up against it a wee bit tonight time-wise. So let's just get fired in, Ross. Let's kick off with recapping just a couple of results from the Scottish Cup I'm going to throw at you, if that's okay, just to get your thoughts on. And yet again, I don't know why I'm asking if it's okay, it's happening. Ross, there's really only one place to start, and maybe people will not be surprised to know this, but despite the fact that there wasn't many, if any, giant killings really from the weekend, so there's really only one place to start, and that's at Somerset, or Palmerston as you like to call it. Ayr United 0, Clyde 1. Clyde's fifth away game in a row, I believe. Obviously, Clyde are playing 4 games a week at the moment, and that will continue with the fact that they're going into the fourth round to take on St Johnstone at McDermott. But Ross, this was obviously, I watched the game. This was a game that, to be honest, was a complete free hit, in my opinion, for Clyde. Played a relatively stronger side than I thought, despite the fact they were missing David Goodwillie and Tom Lang and McGlinchey and a couple others. What a result for Clyde.
Firstly, I called it Palmerston once, just once.
And you'll never be allowed to forget it.
No, clearly considering it was possibly last year, if my memory serves me correctly, but that's fine. No, it's a funny one, Clyde going to Somerset and winning. When this round of the Cup was released and you had said to me, with Clyde's fixtures, pick one game that you wouldn't mind Clyde losing, it would have been this, with as you've said, the fixture congestion that Clyde have. But it's a great result. I don't want to say I expected Clyde to get a bit of a doing, but maybe a 2 or a 3-0, especially considering, as you say, a couple of kind of key players missing out due to injury, and just obviously Danny Lennon doing his best to try and rotate the squad as much as he possibly can, as we've talked about over the last couple of weeks. But just a great result. Barry Cuddihy with an early goal, and Clyde just saw it out. I think it's a sore one for David Hopkin. I think early it's the kind of result he probably could have done without, to be honest. But as you say, it's an absolute free hit for Clyde. Great for the confidence, but we'll see in the coming weeks, is it going to have a major knock-on effect, especially with the draw-offs that they got? Is that going to bring even more out of players that they really can't afford to in the league?
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how it affects both sides moving forward, Ross. Obviously, we're recording on the 7th of April, which is obviously the Wednesday night, and both these sides played last night on Tuesday. Obviously a lot of Ayr fans just I was going to say gutted, but I think more angrily gutted, if that's a term, about Saturday's result, going by social media comments, and obviously they were very heavily beaten by Dundee in the league last night, and on the flip side of that, Clyde managed to get a very deserved 1-1 draw at home to Cove Rangers before Clyde are back in action tomorrow night. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see. I don't think you might not feel the effects of this result and the knock-on of what's going to happen until, like you say, Ross, a few weeks down the line when we get to, I say a few weeks down the line, I think it's next week that the fourth round's taking place, so time really isn't an element anymore ultimately. But yeah, let's quickly cover one or two more games, Ross, that stood out. Bohora Rangers 1, Stranraer 3 after extra time. Obviously, Bohora Rangers going 1-up in that game before probably just, especially after catching the highlights, the fitness and that wee bit of quality from Stranraer as well. It was soft goals, I have to say, though, at times, soft goals. Bohora Rangers will be disappointed, but Stranraer going up there and probably quite shutting a few people up, probably including the likes of myself, who thought that this was a fantastic opportunity for Bohora Rangers to get through. But a good result, Ross, for Stranraer, who are obviously trying to stay in that promotion playoff push in League Two as well. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good result. I certainly think they probably would have liked to try and avoid it coming, an extra time, but they'll just be happy that they're through. Again, similar as it was for Hearts in the last round, a potential banana skin. Would you have been majorly surprised to see Stranraer go out? Maybe not, but the league form has been kind of up and down, so it just really depended what team showed up on the day, and they had, as you say, that little bit of late quality to kind of see them through. We may have a question about this, so I'm sorry if I'm cutting us off already.
Go for it.
There was a comment I think made about, does this kind of put any kind of brakes on the kind of thought around, teams within the pyramid that are knocking on the door of the SPFL?
Well, just to come in there, Ross, this has been a good time. We may as well throw this question, right timing for it, from a friend, Tito1872 on Reddit, of course, the man himself, asked us another great question, Ross, which is, does Stranraer knocking Bohora Rangers out of the cup cast doubt on the idea that many non-league teams are being unfairly kept out of the league system, Ross? I imagine that's what you're going to cover.
That's what I was trying to get to, certainly, in one sweet time. I think to the casual fan, the short answer is yes. I think if you just have a casual interest in the lower leagues and the wider pyramid, you look at that result, you're just going to go, oh, well, we heard a lot of noise about these teams last summer. There's been talk this year also with Kelty and Brora having just been declared champions in the Lowland and Highland leagues. Why should then, if they're going to extra time and then getting, beat 3-1 off Stranraer, why should they be, allowed into the pyramid, this kind of idea? But I think for anybody that has, either a team at that kind of end of the pyramid or, has a kind of deeper interest like we do, I think on the surface 3-1 is probably a wee bit unfair, but as you say, two soft goals. But again, it then becomes a case of, if for talking sake, Brora or Kelty or whatever other team you want to put into the pyramid, if they come into the SPFL and have a season or two to acclimatise and recruit to that level, then you don't see results like this. And like that can be a league result in League Two. It can happen every week. It's just one of those things. So I think it depends on what your level of interest is at that kind of level, to be honest. I don't know that there's a straightforward yes or no. I think for the casual fan, it's a yeah, probably it does cast a bit of doubt, but I think for anybody with interest, we want to see a bit of change, certainly.
It's just it's a cup tie, especially, Ross. Anything can happen.
Exactly.
Anything can happen in the Scottish lower leagues. That's the joys of it. But it's a one-off, and you need to take everything into consideration of what's been going on. Stranraer are back playing regularly. Bohora Rangers aren't. Obviously, they only had that game against Hearts a couple of weeks before. But the difference is this was a one-off result, but in the wider scheme of things, the likes of Bohora Rangers, Kelty Hearts, and other sides like that have consistently been knocking out the door for 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Grant, this one-off defeat against Stranraer is not going to derail Bohora Rangers' ambitions, in the coming years. And obviously, I'm sure we'll cover it in a couple of weeks' time, when obviously Bohora Rangers and Kelty Hearts will meet in order to decide who takes on who finishes bottom of League Two. And let's hope that they get confirmation through from the governing bodies that they can get back training. Obviously, it's only 2 weeks to the game, so let's hope that they can at least get 4 or 5, maybe even 6 sessions in before that game. But no, overall, fair play to Bohora Rangers, obviously, and Stranraer, a nice wee addition to what's becoming, a more of an upward trajectory for their season, really. as well. Obviously, just a bit of a roundup, I guess. Like I say, disappointing the overall for lower league clubs against Premiership sides. For example, Celtic running out winners over Falkirk, Killie running out winners over Stenhouse. I thought Raith Rovers were really unlucky, losing after extra time away to Livingston. I thought they done really well there. But on the flip side of that, you've got the likes of Forfar and Montrose going through as well, which obviously at least leaves a handful of lower league sides for us to do even more Scottish Cup episodes, Ross. I feel as if it's week on week we're doing it just now. But yeah, just before we move on from the Scottish Cup overall, Ross, I just wanted to get your thoughts on, I know they do the fourth and the fifth rounds at the same time this season, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's focus on the fourth round draw. Is there a tie there? I don't know if you've got it up in front of you, but is there a tie there that includes a lower league side that stands out to you? Is there one in particular that you're looking forward to?
I'm glad you kept talking there because I actually just scrolling trying to find it. So
go for it.
So I'm looking at it. For one that I can see a lower league team getting through, I think to put my neck in the line, I'm going to stay well aboard the Inverness train, and I'm going to say I fancy Inverness to win at New Law Street. They are on a roll just now. It seems to all finally be clicking for Neil McCann and Inverness. I'm not saying they look unstoppable by any means, but St Mirren again, similar to what I'm saying about Ayr United. It depends what St Mirren team turns up. They could be absolutely run away with the game. They could struggle, and that could play Inverness's hands. The kind of style of play that they have as well. So that's the one for me that if I was to put my neck in the line, I think that's the most likely one that I can see a lower league team going through. I'm just going to jump in and go for it and say St Johnstone Clyde. I can't see anything but St Johnstone winning there very comfortably. Not just because they're a Premier League team and Clyde are a League One team, but I expect Clyde's legs to have begun to start to run out at that point. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's just the way the season's gone and the way the fixtures are played out. I can see them run out of steam. Fancy Hibs to very comfortably, beat Stranraer. Forfar Dundee United could be a sticky one, but I don't see a major upset there either, to be honest. Motherwell Morton, I'm kind of in two minds because I don't rate Motherwell very highly this season at all. And Morton are very much that, I don't want to say combustible element, but they just have something about them under Gus McPherson that they can just scrape results now and again, and you just never know. It's the cup.
It is the cup. That's the thing. Obviously, they got that kind of, I think, very initial bounce when McPherson came in, but the last couple of results for Morton haven't been great. Obviously, last night's defeat, obviously at home to Inverness Caley Thistle, was really bruising. I think two sides that you would think in the Championship that were relatively fighting, only a couple of weeks ago to avoid, getting dragged into the mire, whereas Inverness are on the upward side of things, and Morton are in a bit of a sticky situation. I watched Morton beat East Fife on Saturday as well after the extra time, and they were really lucky to get even through the extra time. Obviously, it was a last-minute penalty that got them there. Especially considering that East Fife had played on the Thursday, they'd taken on Clyde, they'd beat Clyde on the Thursday as well. So I don't know, I think Motherwell might just be too strong there. But for me, Ross, just before we move on, is Kilmarnock at home to Montrose. It's quite an interesting one for me. Montrose obviously getting a good result in the Scottish Cup weekend there. And I think they can go to Killie and cause them a few problems. I know Killie ran out comfortable winners at Oakville View, a Kyle Lafferty hat-trick there as well, but I don't know. I think Montrose, will be a much tighter game, and I think if Montrose can if Montrose can take the lead, for example, we've obviously watched Montrose quite a lot. Big fan of their defensive setup, the shape, and everything about them. So who knows? Could be a good one for Stuart Petrie to go and test himself against a Premiership outfit.
Possibly. I think the fact that the Old Firm drew each other in this round as well, pretty much all the other teams will be thinking, if we can get through here, we have a right good chance of potentially getting to a cup final. Yeah,
exactly. So it'll be fascinating. I'm so ill with Scottish Cup fever, Ross, that I'm struggling to speak. This isn't the lager talking. Anyway, plenty more games for us to talk about, Ross, starting with last night, Tuesday night. Let's pick out a game or two from each division that stood out before we look ahead to this coming weekend. Obviously, 2 games that took place in the Championship, Ross, so let's just cover them quickly. We mentioned it in the Scottish Cup segment. Ayr United 0, Dundee 3. Obviously, just a really worrying result for Ayr, which keeps them in 7th place, only a point off of Morton, who are currently occupying 9th spot at the moment. However, Dundee, going from strength to strength after what was a fantastic, comeback against Dunfermline in the televised game not long ago, and they've kind of went from strength to strength there, solidifying their spot in 3rd. That's them now 5 points clear of Dunfermline, who've slipped into 5th place. A lot of concern at East End Park amongst the Dunfermline fans about Crawford and things like that. Ross, what do you make of this result?
I just don't know what to say about Dundee anymore, because when I praise them, they go on a horrible run, and when I kind of shit can them, they then go on a really good run. So, again, it's the same thing we were saying about Ayr United just previously. They've just not turned up. Dundee, on their day that we all know have that attacking threat, they're very long in the tooth, they can do teams damage, and they've done that. At this point, especially with the drop-off that Dunfermline have had that you just talked about, Queen of the South, falling out of the race, I should say. They'll just be looking to keep track with the Rovers now and just keep very comfortable in the playoffs, as you say, and results like this will do them absolutely no harm. But again, I just don't really know what to say about Dundee. It's just wild the way this season's going with Dundee, to be honest.
I know, it is. I mean, the title of our podcast last week, as you know, you can flip Dundee and Dunfermline. It feels week in, week out, game by game at this point in the season. You just don't know what's going to happen. So yeah, it'll be very interesting. Ayr are perilously close to getting dragged into that. Especially all it takes is for Arbroath or Morton to get a win, and they're back in it. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Heading over to Capello, Ross, Morton 1, Inverness, Calais Thistle 4. I think that's now 6 wins on the bounce for Inverness, who have climbed up to 4th. 2 points clear of Dunfermline. Granted, Inverness have played a game more. What a turnaround, in Inverness's season. It was peaks and troughs in the last couple of weeks before, obviously, John Robertson stepped away. Neil McCann took a game or two to get settled in, but now 6 wins on the bounce. The impact that the likes of Scott Allen is having since he's came in the first few games he's had, the likes of Todorov as well, the goals that he's popped up with another 2 last night as well. It's looking like Inverness may well secure that last playoff spot in place of somebody like Dunfermline, Ross.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Please do.
Do you think that Inverness are in danger of being relegated?
I'm actually going to quote a good friend of mine, Ross Gray, who occasionally appears on the podcast, as you know, and say there is no chance in hell Inverness are going to get relegated. Ross, you must be very happy with yourself that your side that we potentially thought might be in danger are now potentially looking to find their own way back to the Premiership.
Yeah, I mean, in nearly 2 years doing this podcast, I think that's probably the first accurate, prediction that I've made. So I'll absolutely cling on to that for dear life. What I will say is, I didn't see Inverness going in this good of a run. I thought that Neil McCann would absolutely guide them to safety. I thought they'd be very comfortably mid-table, but I think it just speaks absolute volumes about the Championship. As Sean McGuigan very poetically put it on A View of the Terrace last week, that teams from 1 to 10 in the Championship are all very much fighting for the title and fighting to avoid relegation at the same time. It's just brilliant. Just what can you say about the Championship? And this is what I'm talking about when we talked about the split. I'm not like kind of veer the conversation off, but we're talking about the split. Do you want to cut teams off? I mean, you look at it, Queen of the South are sitting in 6th with 30 points. They're only 6 points off the playoffs. It's 2 wins. And it takes Dunfermline to have another loss. Inverness to maybe trip up, Dundee to trip up as we know they can. It just feels like you're cutting teams off, but again, it's the beauty of the championship that this can happen.
It is, and I'm sure the split will have, especially, funnily enough, timely, moving on to League One, Ross. I think that the split's going to have a potentially similar impact there, where it is so close in the middle of that pack there. I think obviously the three bottom sides in League One at the moment, obviously Forfar, Dumbarton and Clyde, I think they've got their own wee five-a-side league or something, whatever's going on there. That'll be they three fighting out to try and see who can finish in that 8th spot. But yeah, the playoffs heated up last night, Ross, especially. And what I think was a standout result of the night, Airdrieonians 2, Falkirk 1. And absolutely, I actually can't put into words, which is good because I'm not very good at using them anyway, how much of a massive, massive result this was for the club, for the manager, for the players, for the fans and everybody about. Airdrieonians, I mean, we've spoken about it the last couple of weeks, Ross, that a couple of more bad results in their season was going to potentially become like what it feels like the last 5 or 6 seasons in League One has been for Airdrie. But obviously, Roy putting them in charge, 1-0 up after just under 10 minutes, Falkirk equalising, and then, Falkirk missing that penalty. Falkirk missing that penalty an hour in, I think, really changed things before obviously Dale Carrick converting the winning, turned out to be the winning penalty for Airdrie. 10 minutes to go. Ross, what potential impact do you think this result could have on not obviously just Airdrieonians, but Falkirk now as well? Because, you look at the league tables, obviously Clyde, Cove finished 1 each last night. Cove will probably be disappointed not to go back up the road with all 3 points there, but, it's still really tight, between the likes of Cove and Montrose, and even now Airdrieonians, who have now climbed into the playoffs in 22 points. How do you think this might pan out for both of these sides?
I think the reaction to this result for mainly Airdrie fans, to be fair, but for just kind of wider League One people of interest was just, what?
Yeah.
Just mass confusion. But it's, I'm joking, but it's a fantastic result for Airdrie. Very much needed for Ian Murray, but, keeps them very much in the playoff mix. I do think that the top 3 in League One is probably, as you very eloquently put it, become like a 5-power league now. I think really, if we're looking at the title, it's down to Falkirk, Cove and Montrose, because Airdrie, it depends if they can start stringing a couple of results together. I don't see Thistle stringing enough results together to go for the title now. East Fife are in with a shout, but I don't see them sticking it out that far. This could be massive. It shows for me now that Falkirk are absolutely paying for not recruiting an out-and-out striker or a real goal-scoring striker. They are absolutely paying the price for the results recently.
They're relying too heavily, I felt, at the beginning of the season anyway, on Callum Morrison, a few moments of magic, Salmon to pop up occasionally, but like you say, Ross, there's no, for example, I think somebody like, for example, all you need to do, see even if Falkirk had taken one of Queen's Park strikers,
absolutely,
for example, whether it be McHugh, Simon Murray, just to give them that wee bit extra firepower to go over the line, because now all you need to do is look at the comment section whenever Falkirk post, especially after last night's results. Falkirk fans are starting to panic now.
And to be honest, so they should. I'm going to say it on this podcast, and yes, I'm going to cling at that Inverness prediction because that's the first I've had. I'm going to make another one. Cove Rangers are going to win League One. Wow.
That is, I was going to say we need to remember that and quote it, but we're recording it and not putting it out, so I'm sure we will. That's a massive, massive prediction, Ross. Your confidence levels must be high. As much as I think it will be much closer, I do think that Falkirk will still limp over the finish line one way or another. But yeah, let's hope for all of us that it's a really tight and exciting title race. I mean, all you need to do, Ross, is look at East Fife 2, Partick Thistle 2 from last night as well. I mean, obviously East Fife right off the bat, me and you were texting, me and you obviously share whenever we stick a wee coupon on, we always share it with each other and keep an eye on the games. And I think both of us just text each other when we see East Fife going 2-0 up against Partick Thistle. We both had on our coupons going, this is just typical. This is absolutely typical. Thistle needed to string, and still do need to string some results together to look upwards in the playoffs. And I mean, last night, I still think obviously it might be a good point when you take a step back, Ross, but I think it's still a setback for them.
What I will say is, in the back of our coupons last night, is I was very much on the fence with this game, and I put my faith in your faith in Partick Thistle. So I don't blame Partick Thistle or Ian McCall for me losing my coupon. I blame you wholeheartedly.
None of that surprises me.
Good. I'm glad.
Any way, shape or form.
Good. Neither it should. On the result, yeah, Thistle just, I said it before the restart happened, they had to get a strong start and they just haven't. They just haven't. I think now that Ian McCall and Stevie Crawford are in the same place, that they won't be sacked, but it'll get to the end of the season and both clubs, both Dunfermline and Partick Thistle, will say to Crawford and McCall respectively, thanks, but we can't carry on like this. Partick Thistle have to get out of League One, and results like this are not helping. Yes, East Fife are playing well, they are scoring goals, they're getting results, be it, single points or 3 points, they're absolutely flying higher than I expected them to. But you just look at Thistle's squad, they've got the players there. They have absolutely got the players there to at the very least be pushing Falkirk, if not in that playoff mix. And they're just, yes, they're close. They sit, what is it, a point off Airdrie just now, which is fine. But them and Airdrie are going to become like Dundee and Dunfermline and just start yo-yoing back and forward, I feel now. And if Airdrie do go on a run between now and the end of the season, Thistle are finished in terms of the playoff. They cannot, as a club, afford to stay in League One. And I'm honestly starting to think that's exactly what's going to happen to them.
Yeah, I'm starting to think they might well be in for another season in League One because, I mean, for example, without Brian Graham, I don't even know where the goals would come from. Obviously, Scott Tiffany been credited with the 94th minute equaliser last night, but it's just not good enough. It's just not good enough. I mean, all you need to do is go back and listen to Ian McCall's post-match from last night, and he's trying to kind of turn it and try and be kind of glass half full, which is surprising for him. But, as he's just saying, if we win our game in hand and we'll get a wee run together and all this and all that. He's been saying that for the entire season. He was saying that when they lost to Clyde in the first game of the season. Do you know what I mean? So, I don't know. I just feel that it's the definition of stop-start, which I realise there's loads of teams that are having that type of season. But for a side of Partick Thistle's calibre in League One, full-time, all you need to do, Joe Cardle setting up the 2 goals last night, their team is too good to be where they are in the league at the moment, regardless of the circumstances that are surrounding it. So it's just, they really need to get moving quickly, Ross. I think, so it'll be vitally important for them to pick up another couple of wins in the next few games. Yeah, ultimately. Absolutely. I think obviously plenty still to get through. Let's go to League Two, Ross, and I'm going to throw it in your court if that's okay. What was the result that stood out for you from last night's games?
You're going to say it's a bit of a cop-out, but I'm going to go for Queen's Park 3, Cowdenbeath 0. I've very much, by all accounts, a routine win for Queen's Park. Looking at it, majority of the possession, 9 shots on target. Cowdenbeath, 35% possession, not a single shot on target. I'm actually starting to really begin to worry for Cowdenbeath because something just tells me Brecon are going to scrape a 1 or 2 somewhere, and that would really put Cowdenbeath in it because they just don't look like doing anything at this point.
It's so bizarre, Ross, so bizarre. We've touched on them before this season. I've previously been not that I'm not now just because of what's happening, but I've actually been a fan of Gary Bowen as a coach. I think he's done some good work in the past. He was doing some brilliant work with Cowdenbeath. Actually, ever since he's been there, you could argue that this season is his first kind of noticeably, drastically poor season. They've always been in and around fighting for the playoffs when he's been there. So it's another worrying result, especially, Ross, when you look at the likes of Brecon picking up a point, obviously, at home to a depleted Stenhousemuir. And also, which I was going to highlight is my result of the night, was Stirling Albion 1, Albion Rovers 1. Stirling Albion needing a penalty to snatch a point at home against an Albion side that I think, as we've touched on, they're scraping points here and there. And, perhaps in any other season that wouldn't be good enough. But from this season, and probably last season as well, scraping the odd point, every few games seems to be what's good enough at the moment, because that's now then 6 points clear of Brecon in 10th. And that's actually Albion up to 8th in the league. Granted, Cowdenbeath have got a game over, Brecon and Albion, and that's Albion Rovers now tied technically on 7th, but Annan Athletic, I mean, it's that kind of from 7th downwards in League Two is absolutely brilliant. Maybe not for the clubs down there involved, but for us, us neutrals, it's great. But yeah, I've got a funny. I'm not just saying this because we wind Ali up, but I still think that Brecon are slowly but surely improving, and the new signings they've made are starting to bed in. They are also starting to pick up the odd point or two. I do think a win will come eventually. Let's obviously just hope for their sake it's not too late, because obviously there'll be a very hungry and determined side ready to meet them in the playoff final as well. Obviously, it was a Edinburgh City drawn 1 each ran Athletic. I think Edinburgh will probably be quite disappointed with that. I think Gary Naismith was saying that in his post-match comments last night, that it's kind of probably the poorest performance since he's been there, but obviously he's had some impact since he's come in, so I don't think they'll be too deflated by that. And despite the game kicking off late, didn't bother them. Elgin back up to second after going through a bit of a blip. Ross Elgin, kind of since the restart, quite a few games, going through a wee bit of a blip, now back up to second on 28 points, granted 10 points behind what is ultimately the champions elect. Ross, you could say in Queen's Park. Right, another exciting weekend of Championship, League One and League Two action for us to look forward to, Ross. Let's head straight into the Championship. A game that stands out for me this weekend, I think it has to be Ayr United at home to Dunfermline. For me, I think that, and we've spoke a good bit about both sides on this podcast so far, but I do think that at opposite ends of the table, this is so important. Another home game for Ayr United as well. They need to get that home form tightened up going into the last 5 or 6 games of this season. I think they need another win or two to make sure they're still a Championship side next season. Dunfermline, I think, probably need to win potentially all of the remaining games in order to make sure they're in the playoffs, or even try and get in the playoffs. If Dunfermline lose this, Ross, I mean, I don't want to say that Crawford will be gone, because, I mean, our guessing game when it comes to managers and their jobs isn't very good. But, I mean, I don't even know if they would give him at the end of the season if he lost this on Saturday. I think it's even though Hopkins obviously not been there for that long, I think it's a big game for both managers.
Yeah, absolutely. Davy Hopkins won't be sacked. I think I have to say that straight away. There's absolutely no danger of that. But as you say, he has to make sure that they are not in any kind of relegation trouble. For Dunfermline, I honestly think the way they're going, Crawford will see the season out regardless of what happens. I mean, as an outsider looking in at the investment in Dunfermline, the players they brought in, it's nowhere near good enough if they don't make the playoffs at the absolute minimum. Quite honestly, it's a tough game to call. I think because the game I'm going to talk about in a minute, for me, is a 6-pointer, I think Dunfermline have to win this.
I don't think a draw does anybody really any good at the end of the day in this game, Ross. But anyway, moving on. What's your 6-pointer you want to talk about?
My 6-pointer is Queen of the South versus Inverness Caledonian Thistle at Palmerston. Yeah, there we go. So I feel like we can close that one off now. We don't have to bring that one up again.
We'll see.
Honestly, long story short, Queen of the South will want to get back on track. They've had a couple of losses in the league, to Morton and Alloa, which they'll be disappointed with. Inverness, by contrast, as we've talked about, are absolutely flying just now. So this game could go either way for me. I think it really depends, again, what Queen of the South turn up, because I think on their day they can be very dangerous. Connor Shields has shown time and time again, the threat that he carries for Queen of the South. It's really about how that Inverness defence either keeps him quiet or kind of lets him have his day. By contrast, as you talked about, the almost mercurial midfield talents of Scott Allen, I think, will be absolutely key here. Absolutely running the show for Inverness just now, and if they can keep him playing free without having him kind of shackled by a defensive midfielder or defenders tracking him, I think that he can be really the decider in this game. And honestly, again, similar to what I'm saying, I could see either team winning it, but I just, going by form alone, I have to back Inverness. And I think if Inverness win, honestly, that's probably Queen of the South out of the playoffs as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I would actually potentially argue that if Inverness go here and get 3 points, Ross Dunfermline, depending on their result, could be out of the playoffs. If Inverness win this game, Dunfermline lose theirs, for example, I don't really think, with only 4, I think it's only kind of 3 or 4 games left, I find it really difficult for Dunfermline to come back. So this is the thing about the Championship, and for example, the guys over at the Pure Championships over in the Pure Football, they talk about this every week as well, as it's just arguably the most exciting league in arguably the UK, you could say, which is great, and it's brilliant for us to be able to watch it as well. So yeah, a lot riding on this weekend in the Championship. And you could say the same for League One and League Two, Ross. We're going to move on to League One just now, and I'm going to put the ball back in your court, if that's okay. Is there a particular tie in League One that stands out?
I've said before, I'm not massively comfortable keep talking about Clyde in this podcast, but I think I have to. For me, I'm kind of going to talk about 3 games in one here, so I apologise if one of them is yours. But
go for it. Throw it all in.
I think we'll have to kind of talk about really what is the relegation battle in League One at this point. So we've got Cove Rangers at home to Dumbarton, Clyde away to Falkirk, and Forfar at home to East Fife. Of those 3 games, the team in the bottom three that I can see taking a result, not necessarily a win, is Clyde. As we've just talked about, Falkirk maybe a bit bereft of confidence just now. Cove Rangers are absolutely flying. I've just tipped them to win the league, so they'll no doubt probably not win the playoffs now.
Relegation playoffs at this rate then.
Absolutely. And for me, after Cove, East Fife are the second most informed team in the league just now. So for all Dumbarton seem to be scraping a couple of results here and there, I just think that if East Fife turn up in the mood, they can probably get a couple of goals there. That's nonsense because they're playing Forfar. I should say. I'm just not convinced by, to be honest. I think really this will be decided by what happens tomorrow night with Clyde and Forfar. I think if Clyde can get a win tomorrow, which I think they absolutely have to ensure their safety, Clyde got into that game with Falkirk, maybe full of confidence, not necessarily with a win, but they'll have the kind of bit between their teeth to go and at least get a point and just really cement themselves.
It's really interesting that you touched on kind of potentially Clyde being the only side that you think can pick up points there. I have to disagree with you. I think that obviously, even though, I guess from a personal perspective for us, especially Euros, it's great, Clyde's record over Falkirk in the last year or two, but for me, I can see Forfar getting a result at home to East Fife on Saturday. I think that, obviously tomorrow for me, obviously, and a lot of Clyde and Forfar fans, is absolutely massive. I think tomorrow night could really dictate how things play out, even going into the split. I think that if Clyde win at home to Forfar tomorrow, I think there's a real good chance that they could clinch that 8th spot, which I'm sure many Clyde fans would bite their hand off for. We would be 2 of them. But much like Dumbarton and Forfar, they'd be the same. I don't know. I think that especially if Forfar lose tomorrow night, then Forfar, I think, need to win at home against East Fife on Saturday. And East Fife side, even though it was such a short loan spell, look as if even though after 2 or 3 games, they look as if they're missing somebody like Nathan Austin up front. I was under the impression that was going to be for the rest of the season. It turns out he's a wee back. So it's a shame that he's went back there. But yeah, it's going to be a really interesting really, really interesting weekend at the bottom of the table. I think Peterhead at home to Partick Thistle's probably another really awkward fixture that Thistle just don't need. Another away game, away to a Peterhead side that have kind of stalled a wee bit in the last couple of games, obviously, probably since that defeat to Clyde, funnily enough. They'll be desperate to get a win and try and drag themselves back into contention for the playoffs if they possibly can, if it's not too late. In a game that I think Thistle probably need to win in order to make sure that they're also kind of dragging themselves back into the playoff mix. So, yeah, I think not only will Saturday be important, Ross, but tomorrow night. I think tomorrow night could have a lot of bearing on things as well. Right, League Two, Ross, to finish us off this evening. I'm going to pick a tie that stands out for me. We're both looking at the same game. I think it has to be. You could argue that this is the game of the weekend in the lower leagues. Obviously, I would have to say that it is for me personally. Is Beacon City at home to Albion Rovers. Now, obviously, there's a high probability that I'll be watching the Falkirk Clyde game, but there's also a probability I might have to watch this on a separate device, because what a game this could be, Ross. I say that, and it'll probably be 0-0. It doesn't suit any side, but what a game this could be, and what an opportunity, Ross, finally for Beacon City to get that big win, surely.
Absolutely. If there's any game they're going to do it, it's got to be against either Albion Rovers or Cowdenbeath. I do think in terms of the stakes on this game being, potentially absolutely make or break for both clubs, as a general club, and for everyone concerned, this could be absolutely massive. I honestly see it finishing 1-0 to who I don't know. If I'm looking at it on balance, it would probably be Albion Rovers if it was going to be either. I would stick a 1-0 on. But as you say, Brecon, I think, will realise that this is a massive opportunity for them to try and do themselves a favour. Taking into account that Cowdenbeath are home to Elgin City, Brecon will be absolutely aware of that. I think they have to win. I don't know if I see them doing it, though, if I'm being honest.
I think it could be a draw then. I agree with you. I think that Brecon, if they've got any hope of staying up, have to win on Saturday.
Yep, I think it's more must-win for them than it is for Albion Rovers, to be honest.
Yeah, I would agree. Albion Rovers would probably take a point and run, to be honest, which isn't a bad. Brian Reid may end up setting up to get a point, because, like you say, Ross, I can't see Cowdenbeath beating Elgin, and you need to take into consideration Annan at this point as well. Obviously, I know they get a good point against Edinburgh City, but still an Albion going up to Annan off the back of that disappointing result at home against Albion Rovers as well. Still an Albion will be looking to bounce back as well. So, like I say, the four sides at the bottom of that division, it's incredibly tight down there.
Absolutely. I think if Albion Rovers win this, they'll finish comfortably seventh, which I think would be just incredible for Brian Reid, considering the way the season started for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would probably be, their highest finish in a good few years, which is wild, like you say, considering how they started the season. So, yeah, I have to say I cannot wait for that game at Glebe Park on Saturday. I think it will be an absolute cracker as well. And, of course, we will be back again next week talking about it all again. I reckon next week, correct me if I'm wrong, Ross, but I reckon next week will probably be another slightly Scottish Cup tinted one, potentially as well. I need to double check the fixtures, but I reckon that
you're right.
We'll be looking ahead to the fourth round of the Scottish Cup. Obviously, we touched on it tonight, as well as much like we've done tonight as well, touching on some of the clubs that are continuing to play Tuesday, Thursday these days. And hats off to everybody, all the clubs, especially the part-time ones that are doing it. A lot of these guys have got jobs and stuff like that, juggling loads of different things. So fair play. And obviously it's great to see, folk like us and other fans making sure we're buying the streams and supporting the clubs and stuff like that as well. So yeah, it's been obviously a couple of weeks now. We've seen, this is the most football I think we've watched in such a condensed period of time. But loving loving it as well. And there's so much to talk about in all the divisions as well. Ross, thank you as ever. A pleasure. Brilliant. And yeah, thank you to everybody that keeps listening. Any further questions, suggestions, thoughts, feel free to let us know. You can get us on social media, over on Twitter at TBLowerLeague, also over on Instagram and LinkedIn, the Talking Lower League as well. And remember, if you're listening to us and not watching us on YouTube, head over to YouTube, search Talking Lower League, and make sure to subscribe and like. And yeah, thanks very much, everybody. Stay safe and enjoy the football, and we'll chat to you all again next week.